Okay, next up is basically, since this is a torque tube system, we can go ahead and build this whole tail off of the heli and get it all assembled, ready to go until it comes time to put it on the heli and adjust the linkage. So anyway, go ahead and get your transmission out. Now you'll notice there's screws already applied and this is pre-assembled. I'm going to go ahead and disassemble it for you, but you'll see on each side there's two screws, and by the way, they are not Loctited. Okay, now I'm not sure you need to take the screws out of the other side, but I would and just Loctite them. I doubt it's that important for these to be Loctited, because when it goes in the frame, I think the frame will be covering these up, but you don't want loose hardware. So we got to take all these out. We're going to need a wrench to hold that. Alright, so anyway, let me get those two screws out. Let's take it apart just to see what it looks like inside. Okay, so there it is apart. Again, I didn't have to take the other screws out of the other side, but I'm going to Loctite them. Whoops. Don't want to lose these. Okay, you'll notice these two internal ones are shorter than the rest of these. Okay, that's because those are those two internal screws. But once you get one side out, as you can see, it's easy to pull this stuff out. Check the bearings if you like. Also, you can pull this out. You might want to double check that those inner races are either a nice press fit on that shaft or green Loctited, and mine seem to be pretty secure on there. Alright, so we can go ahead and put it together wrong. Put it together right and put it back together, and just go ahead and reassemble the whole unit. I would again Loctite those internal screws, and then we're ready to continue on putting the boom on and everything. Okay, next up is go ahead and get your boom out and get all the bags of hardware there. The first one is these bearings, and we have to assemble the torque tube. So what you're going to do first is go ahead and get your torque tube out. Alright, and what you need to do is go ahead and get a ruler, and they want you to measure 230 millimeters to where one of the bearings go. And then what I'm going to do is, once I get 230 from the end of the rod, and just take my X-Acto and put just a little mark in the anodizing there so I can see where my bearing goes. Flip the rod over, okay, and we're going to go 230 again, and I'm going to make a little mark right there. Scratch in the anodizing so I see where my bearing goes. Alright, so go ahead and get the bearings out. We'll go ahead and get those in place. Okay, so we got one of the bearings out. Now this is what I like to do, and you have to be careful not to get any CA into the bearing. So I like to slide it on the shaft, and then let's see, let me find my 230 mark. There it is right there. And then take a little CA. Now you're not going to make a mess of this. It's only a little bit. Take a little bit of the CA. Then what I like to do is put it on the shaft. Okay, and go ahead and just take a tool or something and spread it around a little bit. Okay, kind of lead a little bit in front of the mark we made, and then slide the bearing over easy, okay, and let that cure. Alright, and as you can see, mine's already gone off. If you didn't get any CA in there, that bearing's going to turn nice and free. So again, you don't need a whole lot. Okay, so same kind of thing. I'm going to slide my bearing on. Okay, where's my 230 mark? There it is. Okay, just a little bit. It doesn't need much. Okay, you're just kind of seating it. Okay, lead it a little bit with the tool, get it smeared around, slide the bearing over the CA, okay, and let it set. Okay, the inner race fits this tube pretty good. On some I've done, the inner race can wobble a little bit on the tube. So if that's your case, which wasn't with this, try to get that bearing straight and not at an angle, okay? So this one, I didn't have to worry about that at all. Alright, let that set up. And let's go ahead and put our rubbers on. Actually, I should be good. So go ahead and put our rubbers on. Okay, and we'll go ahead and get this ready to go. Put our ends on. Okay, you just want to get all this on before you put your ends on. Torque tube ends, alright? So let me just get that on there. Okay, make sure that's nice and seated. Again, bearing spin free. Alright, so let's go ahead and get our ends out, and these little screws, we'll go ahead and put those on. Okay, this is pretty straightforward. You see there's two threaded holes in the end, and there's two holes in your torque tube. Go ahead and put one in. Get the holes lined up. I've already pre-locked to applied some Loctite to the screw. Make sure you don't cross thread. Now what I like to do is just snug it, don't tighten it yet. Go ahead, Loctite the other one. Get it snugged, and then tighten them up evenly. Don't wail on one and then wail on the other. But this is pretty straightforward, so go ahead and get them in there. And then tighten that one up, come back, tighten this one up. Just don't want anything tightened up unevenly here. Okay, so go ahead and get the other one on, and we're done with the torque tube. Okay, at this point, get your boom out. Notice the outrage writing One end has a slot. This goes into the helicopter. This end has a hole. You're going to put your tail case on so that the clamp is opposite this hole. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and insert this all the way. And it's kind of a tight fit. I'm not going to worry about alignment just yet, because all we want to do is get our torque tube in there. So at this point I'm not going to Loctite the clamp. I'm just going to kind of snug it down, because once you get this on the heli and this slot goes into the boom case, you'll need to turn this tail so your fin's completely vertical. So that's why we're not tightening that up yet. Okay, so now this is something I've always done on all my torque tube helis. You know, it tells you on some of these in the plans to go ahead. This is 100% silicone oil, food grade, so it won't eat rubber. Alright, I just prefer that when doing this kind of stuff. So what you want to do is get some of this all on the rubbers. Alright. But what you also want to do is pre-lube the boom, because here's what's going to happen. As you slide these into the boom, it's just going to squeegee the oil off these rubbers. Alright, so you're going to wind up getting halfway down there, and it's going to start tightening up, and then as you push, you're just going to pop the rubber right off the bearing. You don't want to do that. So what I do is I take some of this oil and I lube up that boom a little bit, and then go ahead and slide one down in there. Okay, just kind of start the rubber a little bit. Try not to slice it on that slot or get it kinked. Okay, once you get started, as you can see, it goes in real easy. Now that rubber's been pushing that oil all the way down in there and squeegeeing it along. So what you want to do is apply a little more again, okay, so that the second rubber gets some, and this will work out so easy. You never have to worry about popping those rubbers off. I've seen a lot of guys do that, especially on the T-Rex, where they just follow the directions, lube the rubber, and don't apply some lube in the boom, and it dries up as they go in. So then, as you see, I'm going right in. Okay, hold the tail rotor and turn the torque tube until you feel the ends line up. Alright, 1 second. Yeah, 1 second, bear with. There we go. Okay, now that's about how far it should stick out. As you can see, if I turn the tail rotor, the shaft's turning. If I turn the shaft, the tail rotor turns. I can't hold it. Now what you might want to do at this point is go ahead and just pull this out like a millimeter, just a hair. Because what you don't want to do is when you put this all together and slide this in the heli, is compress the ends of that torque tube, thus causing it to bow inside the boom. So what I like to do is just back it off a hair. Make sure I'm seated. Back it off just a hair, about a millimeter. Alright, so that when I go and insert this into the boom, I got the same thing. Alright, so that kind of gets the torque tube in. We're going to put on some of the rest of the hardware and continue on.